Hello Year 5 and welcome to your second RE lesson looking at Judaism. So before we move on with today's lesson, we're going to do a quick retrieval practice, and this is going back 2 weeks ago because we alternate our RE and PDW lessons fortnightly. So you're really going to have to dig deep to see if you remember this from our first lesson. So first question is, what is the name of the Jewish holy book? Now I've included a picture there which might help you. And the second question is, can you remember the name of the other important Jewish book used for daily prayers? So I'd like to pause the video, and in a full sentence, I'd like to write down the answers to those 2 questions. Okay, so the name of the holy book is the Torah. Okay, so the Torah is actually a big scroll, so it's a very giant scroll where the transcripts and scriptures are written on the scroll, and then it's moved to each position every day. Now, if you hadn't remembered this one, the Siddur is the prayer book that contains the set of daily prayers. Okay, so those are the 2 important books within the Jewish faith. So, for your lesson today, our learning objective is to understand the significance of prayer in Judaism. So by the end of the lesson, we need to be able to explain why prayer is important to Jewish people. So what is it there for? See if we can think about comparing prayer in the home and private prayer, and to judge the importance of having different types of prayer. Now, we're also going to be looking at the different elements of the Jewish faith that match with prayer. So maybe certain books or certain other equipment or clothing that's worn. So for Jewish people, okay, as with many of the people in other religions, prayer is always that central part of worship. Okay, so it's a focal point for the religion. Okay, now very observant Jewish people will pray 3 times a day. So they'll pray in the morning, they'll pray in the afternoon, they'll also pray in the evening. Now, for those of you that might be religious, think about your faith and think about your religion and think about what you might pray for. How many different reasons can you think of why Jews would pray, and what would they pray about? So just want you to have a pause and have a think. If you're sat at school and you're sat next to a partner, by all means have a chat between them. If not, just pause the video and have a think. Okay, well, let's explore that a little bit more. So first of all, what is prayer? So here is a picture of a Jewish man praying. Now, you might notice some very distinct features on the image. You might be looking at what is he wearing. And rather than annotating your sheet, which I've written on there, I've done it for you. So we're going to go through this together and then look at each part in more detail. So here he is wearing, on the top of his head, what we call a tefillin. That's a small black leather box, which contains different sections of the Torah. It's written on very small parchment that's rolled up and it's stored inside. Now, some people would wear it around the head and sometimes they'd wear it around their arms. So depending on what prayers they're going to say throughout the day, they've got those additional copies for them to be able to read in that little box. Now here we can see the prayer book, okay? Now this could be a copy of the Torah, because although it's out on a scroll, you'd have to have your own copy to be able to read. But it could also be the prayer book, okay? And that's known as the Siddur, which is what we looked at in our retrieval practice. Now on his head here, he's wearing what we call a kippah. Now that is a skull cap, okay? And it's as the mitzvot command. Okay, so that's one of like the religious pieces of clothing that they wear on their head. Now he's also wearing another piece of clothing here called a talit. Now it's a prayer shawl. Now all the individual little tassels that will be on the bottom of it represent the different numbers of the commandments. Okay, so it links into the religious books. So let's go through them in a little bit more detail. So most Jewish men, as you can see here from this picture, will wear a kippah when they pray. Okay, and that's the small cap, and it's worn there as a sign of respect. So not to have your head facing directly to where your God is. So it's that sign of respect, it's that little barrier between, to show that sign of respect to God above. Now, some of them, like that other gentleman, are wearing that shawl, okay, which is called the talit when they pray. Now, each corner of the talit has tassels, and these are called tzitzit. Okay, and each tassel has 5 knots. Now we know that another name for the 5 books within the Torah are also known as the 5 books of Moses. So each one of those 5 knots will represent the 5 different books of Moses. Now you can see just very carefully here, you can see right on the corner, you can see some of the tassels there, and you can see the knots that have been twined into them. Now, this is the black box that we were talking about from that original picture. Okay, so this is the Tefillin. Now, we know this has got the passages from the Torah, and it's also got a very specific prayer called the Shema. Now, we might touch on this in our next RE lesson. So here you can see in this picture that this gentleman and this gentleman here have it wrapped around the head. But here you can see he's actually starting to strap it around his arm. So he's got that there as a go-to. Now, if you also look very closely at his shawl, you can see the individual knots, okay, with the tassels that are tied round, and you can see it on this gentleman's one here as well. You can see the individual knots, okay. Now, the reason why they're worn on two different parts of the heads is very important, okay. So one tefillin they have is strapped to their head. Now, this is to encourage them to be thinking with their mind more about God. Okay, so with your brain, you're thinking, you've got your cap on, your kippah. So as a sign of respect, you're thinking about God. Now, the other one is worn on your left arm because if you have a look at where your left arm is on the side of your body where your heart is. Okay, so when you have it on your left arm, that means it's nearer to the heart. So not only are you praying through your mind, but you're also praying through your heart as well. So it's that knowledge and devotion to God, but also that love and devotion to God as well. Now, Jewish people pray in lots of different ways. So when they have their Jewish prayer book, which is the Siddur, it contains prayers in a set order. So specific prayers should be said throughout the day at certain different times, but equally throughout different points of time in the year. So depending on whether they have specific festivals that come up, they would have a specific set of daily prayers that would be linked to that special event. Now, there is one very special prayer called Shema. Now, this prayer, it's a declaration of faith in one true God. Now, this is one prayer that they say daily, but twice. So the prayer is said in the morning and the evening, okay? But Jewish people do not only follow prayers that have already been written, okay? So a bit like if you think about any other religion that you have, be it Buddhist, be it Catholic, be it Sikh, you wouldn't always be praying just specifically for the prayers that are set in that book. I know within the Catholic faith, I know my grandma, she used to pray for me, probably still does pray for me, every single night that I got through school well, that I did really well, that I made lots of friends, that I worked really hard, that I had a happy life. Those aren't prayers that were specifically written within our Holy Bible. But she took the time to sit there and she had her own prayers. Sometimes when someone's not very well or is in hospital, sometimes people might sit there and have a prayer in the hope that God looks out for that person. So the same thing applies with anyone who is Jewish as well. They don't just sit and they pray based on the book and a set of prayers that they have to follow, but it's important to make sure they take the time to sit and pray to God for things that they want to talk about, things that they want to pray about that are important for them. And as a result, they then can either do that by themselves, they might sit in a group with other people and they exchange that conversation where they ask for forgiveness. Maybe they think they've done something wrong and they need it forgiving. It might be to praise God and to thank him because they've looked out for someone or they've been there in someone's prayers and in their thoughts. It could be to make a request, to keep them to get him to keep an eye out for somebody, to make someone feel better, to keep an eye of you when you're doing your exams. Okay, there are lots of different reasons, but it doesn't mean that they genuinely just pray from the specific prayers written in the book. It's important for them to connect on their own personal level as well. Same with any faith. You're always going to sit there and pray for a multitude of other things that aren't in your holy book. So your task for this lesson, okay, is I would like you to read these prayers. Now, I've typed these up for you this time round in the hope that they aren't as fuzzy for you to be able to print if that's what you want to do. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to read each of the prayers. And I want you to read them out loud to yourselves and then read them to yourselves in your head to really understand what it is that you've read. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about what each prayer means. Are they thankful for something? Are they asking for something? Are they giving something? Is it for a happy reason? Is it for a sad reason? Think about the emotions and the feelings behind each of those prayers. Then I want you to think about why and when it might be prayed. Is there going to be a reason behind it? Is it a general prayer for day and night? Is it a prayer to protect somebody? Is it a prayer to make someone better again? Is it a prayer for forgiveness? Think about what those prayers might mean and what the purpose it might serve. So why would someone want to say that prayer? Okay, so underneath each one, okay? Or if you're not going to print this, which you don't need to do, okay? You don't need to print this. It's on the screen for you to see if you want to rewind the video to this point. I want you to jot down in your book, so you can do a bubble map or you can write your bullet points for each one. I want you to have a go at answering those questions that are written in the box up here. So think about what the prayer means, why and when it might be prayed, and what purpose it might serve. Okay, and I want you to just have a think about them and jot down your ideas. Okay, and then in 2 weeks' time, we will come back and we will review this on our next lesson. Okay, good luck, year 5.